Even during Joe Biden's presidency, when Benjamin Netanyahu would appear on camera with Joe Biden or Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, you know that both sides hated each other. But Netanyahu didn't engage in this kind of belligerent badgering, heckling, and embarrassing his host. I just think this is the most astonishing thing. Here, let's play this a little bit more. Keep watching.
Campaign for the opposition in October, offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I answer?
Wait a minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You haven't been alone.
In this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if you
didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you,
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen.
Everyone in that room knew how unusual this was. And by the way, it was packed with reporters. And J.D. Vance makes the point again, why are you litigating this out in public? I think that's J.D. Vance's way of saying, listen, everything you're saying is legitimate, or at least is heartfelt, and you can, there's nothing illegitimate about complaining about, he said we were alone. Trump said, no, you weren't. You had our money and weapons. But it's okay to say you felt alone because it's true. No other country's soldiers had boots on the ground. So in that sense, he was alone. And I think if I was on Zelensky's staff, the number one argument I would use privately, not publicly, is you told us to keep fighting. You told us never to negotiate, never to have a ceasefire. They had a peace treaty almost done 3 years ago, and Boris Johnson came and ordered Zelensky not to sign it. That would be my private argument. I would say to America, we are in this disastrous war because you egged us on the whole time. You forbade us from having ceasefires. You scuppered the deal. How can you hang us out to dry now? That's what I would say if I was a Zelensky staffer. But even after J.D. Vance, for the second or third time, says, don't fight with us in public. Are you hearing what he's saying? He's saying, don't do this in front of the cameras. Do this in private. Let it all out in private. And even now, Trump is talking and Zelensky's talking over him. And I'm not saying you have to treat Donald Trump like a king, but how about use your noggin a bit? Do you want to win the argument but lose the negotiation? If you swallow your pride a little, there's one thing you'll notice about every cabinet secretary in the Trump administration. Whenever they're about to announce something awesome, they always say, under Donald Trump's leadership or with Donald Trump as the president, they always give the kudos and the credit to the boss. Now, by the way, it's true. If it weren't for Trump, none of the cabinet would be appointed. They are all his appointees. They are successful because of his coattails. So it is literally true. But of course, it also makes Trump feel good. And it also shows some loyalty to Trump, which I think is necessary or at least understandable, because in his entire first term, half of his appointees were disloyal. Half of his appointees were trying to undo his mandate and his projects. So put aside how you feel, or put aside, we don't need to be so submissive to Trump. Well, how about have a get ahead? They say, don't get mad, don't get even, get ahead. Vladimir Zelensky is getting mad He's certainly not getting even, and oh my God, is he not getting ahead? And I just find it astonishing what he has given up here. For what reason? Just because he couldn't come in and say, Mr. President, thank you for using your power and charisma and credentials to get a deal done. To say, like, how about just, there's an old British saying, a diplomat is someone who lies abroad for his country. And if you know the source of that, it was sort of a triple pun. To lie abroad is what a battleship does when it uses its guns sideways, and to lie abroad, of course, you're telling lies abroad. A diplomat is someone who lies abroad for his country. And Zelensky could just tell some white lies, Mr. President, you're super awesome. Mr. President, I thank you so much. And he would have gotten this deal done. Instead, I'll give away the ending. They basically kicked him out of the White House. They canceled a formal press conference and they sent him out without dinner. And let's watch the final moments.
Please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was with
wasn't with
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave
Pause right
javelins.
there. What he's talking about is blankets, actually. I don't know why he's saying sheets. Obama didn't give the same lethal weapons. He gave humanitarian weapons, not even weapons, blankets. But put aside that factual detail there. Look at the bickering, look at the arguing, look at the interrupting. And most Americans don't really know much about Vladimir Zelensky other than he's a foreign guy who never wears a suit, who asks for a lot of money. And now when he's being asked repeatedly to be a little bit polite, a little deferential, to say thank you, he's arguing. I can only imagine Vladimir Putin and the Russian foreign ministry watching this video just shocked and stunned. Vladimir Zelensky, in the course of 20 minutes, I believe, has done more damage to his reputation in the United States, or at least to Republicans. And by the way, right now they can control all the branches of the government. In terms of support for more funding or support to drag this on, I think Vladimir Zelensky, if he could have just kept it together and smile and wave, just think that you're like the queen or the king, just smile and wave. Smile and wave. If you could just suck it up for 10 more minutes, it would have been done. Instead, he was booted out. Okay, watch the rest.
You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia...
The attitudes have to change. It's true. A lot of deal making is based on personal connection and trust. And I've just never seen anything like that. And all I've been thinking of since I saw that earlier today was who was speaking in Vladimir Zelensky's ear? Who put him in that frame of mind? Or is that his natural state? Hey, I want to show you a very short clip. This is the Ukrainian ambassador to America. Take a look at her, just watching what was going on and just putting her head in her hands and thinking, this can't be salvaged. I truly feel bad for her. This was the Hindenburg of diplomatic blow-ups. I've just never seen anything like it. Do you know who Lindsey Graham is? He's a Republican senator. He's a real hawk. He's very hawkish on war. He was for wars in the Middle East, for wars in Ukraine. He's visited Ukraine about 10 times. He always votes for and supports more money for Ukraine. He watched this exchange and he was stunned by it. Here, watch Lindsey Graham, who's never voted against a military appropriation or a war in his life. I think it's all he lives for. And listen to him saying he wouldn't do any business with, he just doesn't think he can do any business with Zelensky anymore. And he was shocked by it. And he said he's never been more proud of Trump. Take a look at this.
All right.
For you and for us.
So, what do I think? Complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know.
Senator Graham, 2 questions. What did President Trump say to you? You just had lunch with President Trump. What did he say to you about his interactions and whether he thinks
he was shocked? He was very upbeat. I told Zelensky, we'll talk about security guarantees. We'll talk about ceasefires and how the war ends. This is a process. You have a new relationship with America, a $500 billion, $500 billion deal that President Trump is proud of, that gives us an interest worth defending. Let's talk about the positive. But he was terrible at Munich, Zelensky, and I think he has made it almost impossible to sell to the American people that he's a good investment, that he is a good business partner.
Last question. Senator, hey, one at a time. One at a time. Christian Daytime.
Thank you. Do you think President Zelensky needs to resign to resume these peace talks?
He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
You know, Donald Trump was stern, but throughout it, he had a sense of kindness. He said things like, your men are brave. They fought bravely. He said that several times. He just kept coming back to his phrase, you don't have any cards to play. Or I would use the phrase, you and what army? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what it is. And this, watching the reaction to this conflagration has been quite something. People who hate Trump pounce on and say, look, he's throwing Zelensky to the wolves. I saw a lot of comments that Trump was more brutal with Zelensky than Putin. Of course, that's not true. Putin has killed hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. But rhetorically, Putin is probably more reserved. But I think this is a moment for the entire Western world to sort of grow up a bit. And this is my message to Canada's leaders too. Donald Trump is a very unusual, powerful, and public man. The fact that he had this public dispute and kept it going, and the fact that he tweets in the way that he does, the fact that he bluntly says whatever's on his mind, even if he changes his mind shortly thereafter, he's very unusual, and I'd even say unique. The fact that he happens to be the leader of the world's most rich and most powerful country is why it's so interesting. There's a lesson here, I think, which is, do you want to win the negotiation or do you want to win the argument? And I think this shows what happens when you go to Donald Trump with demands that you just can't fulfill, when you do not have the cards, when you're writing checks that cannot be cashed. And obviously that applies to Ukraine, a country that has been devoured by Putin, that has really no tax base anymore. An enormous number of their people have fled as refugees. Their land has been annexed or conquered. The thought that he could show public chutzpah towards Trump is astonishing bad judgment on his part. But more than bad judgment, it's counterproductive. I say again, he was sort of frog marched out of the White House, dinner canceled, etc. It would not surprise me, frankly, if he resigns or in some way steps aside as leader and someone else will finish the job. It wouldn't surprise me at all, given the disaster diplomatically here. What happens if Trump just says, good luck? Good luck with you and your European friends. Because that's the alternative that Trump is referring to when he says you have no cards. The lesson for Canadians is, if we actually want to win, don't be disrespectful. Don't poke at him. Don't insult him. Don't try to embarrass him in the media, especially in his own office. And I think if you look how Justin Trudeau, Melanie Joly, Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney are all talking about Trump, and frankly, even Pierre Poilievre, trying to flex his anti-Trump muscles lest he be tagged as a pro-Trump person. I don't think that's the approach. I think the approach by Danielle Smith, which is never throwing Canada under the bus, never disparaging Canada or any part of Canada, being positive and upbeat, being flattering where appropriate, and just saying, look, we are after happy Trump, positive Trump, effusive Trump, ambitious Trump, deal-making Trump, and we're going to be in the right frame of mood. You heard the last thing that Trump said in that clip. He talked about attitude. Well, I think the amazing thing about Trump is that he can actually work with people who have insulted him before. As long as they just fix that, they can get along famously. I mean, whether it's Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, remember he gave them nicknames. He said Lion Ted Cruz and Little Marco. Like there's so many people in the Republican Party that he just thrashed, but they kissed and made up, and now they're productive friends. And it's not just in politics, it's in business. Mark Zuckerberg had a come to Jesus moment with Trump, and now Zuckerberg has found a happy way to coexist, and he's actually becoming more freedom-oriented. I think Canada can get through our current diplomatic challenge with the United States easily. But I think that we've chosen the Zelensky approach. And the crazy thing is, I think Zelensky chose it by accident, or he was sort of put up to it or set up for it, or he misunderstood the motivations of Trump. Maybe he actually thought Trump does believe or should believe that Ukraine is all that's standing between Putin and America. Trump doesn't believe that. But in the case of Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, and Chrystia Freeland, our political class absolutely knows that we're not about to be invaded by Donald Trump and annexed as the 51st state. He never said that at all. He never talked about seizing or annexing. He suggested that Canadians would choose. Our political leaders know that it's not a hostile act, it's a taunt. But they're choosing their attitude. They're choosing to fight for their own political interests. I don't think it's going to work out well for them either. Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.